Okay, tell me about y'all's romance in life. We've talked business and all that kind of stuff. We'll talk about community in a minute. But tell me about y'all's romance in life. It's a storybook kind of, at least from the outside anyway, a storybook kind of situation. So, Evelyn, why don't you start? Why did you marry this man?
One, because I love him. But anyway, Lee and I met. It was an odd way we met. I was coming home from school one day, and my father would go to New York, bring apples back, because my father was a contractor, and he did a lot of traveling, picking apples and different things during the season. So I had an apple in my hand coming home from school, and I was one who would take an apple to school and bring it back home with me. Why, I don't know. So Lee was behind me and caught up with me and took my apple. And when he took the apple, he started off, going about his business. So I picked up a rock and threw it at him and hit him with the rock. So that's how we started off.
True story.
What year?
I'd have done the same thing.
Yeah.
You don't take my apple.
It was a match made in hell.
Her aim is still real.
Her man was still good. Yeah, that's a true story. It's fascinating.
That's funny. That's a great story.
Yeah.
Very true.
So tell me about when you got married to him and all that sort of stuff.
Okay.
Or even dating, if we can keep it short. But I'm really interested when y'all got married.
Okay. Lee was very busy at school because Lee was the leader of, Lee was like the principal of the school. He was the, president of the student council, and very busy. And we did some things together, we went on picnics and little things like that. But I felt for Lee because of who Lee was. I knew Lee was going to be somebody, Lee always businesslike, taking control. I could remember in school, president of the student council, Lee would tell someone to do something, and they would do it before they would do it for the principal of the school. So that's why I began to fall for Lee, because he was very intelligent, very respectful, kind, and loving. So we did a lot of things together. I could remember when Lee worked at the power plant. Every day during the summer, I would cook and take Lee lunch. And that was, I was investing in, Lee. So, when we
pork chop sandwich.
Yeah, and an apple, a fruit, a drink, chips, things like that.
Now,
So
I might add something. Now, she's walking in the Florida sun from her house to downtown Fort Pierce to bring me a sandwich.
She must have loved you.
I
I don't know if you
told
deserve that much love. If you didn't spend any time with her.
I totally always loved Lee, from the beginning, because the way he, presented himself, very honest and everything. So when Lee left for college a year before I went to college, and that was very hard, but we would see each other, and just in love.
So when did you get married? When did y'all actually get married? When did you get married?
Oh, we got married in at the league.
Okay. Came to Rolls Royce.
Right.
I came to.
Allison.
We got married right out of college.
Right.
So what was the date of that marriage, Lee? I'm putting you on the spot. What was the
October
date?
13th. Yeah,
What year?
October 13th.
1972.
Good.
You're not going to get me killed.
People know Lee Rhyant from seeing him in a leadership role. What do people need to know? By the way, we use the term Godfather not so much about the movie, but people who made things happen, and he did. So people saw that. Some people saw it loving, respectful, tough, whatever. What's the part of Lee Rhyant that people don't know?
People do not know that Lee is a big teddy bear. Lee is so soft inside, but the outside, he want to act like he's so, this and that. But Lee is loving and so kind. Lee love people. Lee will do anything for a person, But Lee want people to think he's, macho.
I love it. I love
That's
it.
a clip.
That's a clip. Okay. And I said this at the very beginning, behind any good man, in the traditional family, behind every good man is a good woman. And talk a little bit about Lee's travel. I know he was gone a lot.
Right.
Y'all had 2 children, right? 2 twins. How'd you handle that? I mean, the kids probably wondered where Daddy was.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the mother in your situation that created a home.
Right.
And stability.
And stability for the children, for yourself. So Lee dashed in, put on a new suit, took off, went somewhere else. But somebody's got to keep the family together.
Right.
I want you to talk a little bit about that. And Lee, this is where you can add in, okay? So, how much you didn't really understand what she was doing until you retired or whatever you were saying. I've got to gain an appreciation more for my wife.
Me
now.
too. I
Right.
really have. Ty, and I want to definitely, guys, I want
Right.
to definitely put that. That was a learning experience.
It was very learning because when we went to Indianapolis, we didn't know anyone. We were really alone. And with Lee working, I stayed home with the boys. And they were babies, and twins. And that was a job. But the good thing about Roderick and Broderick as babies, they were good babies, And during the day, they would do for themselves almost, play with each other, talk with each other. And you might not believe it, but twins have a language of their own. I couldn't understand what they were saying to one another. The only time I understood them was when they wanted something from me, and that was it. But Lee, like you say, Lee traveled a lot. So that left me, your mom, the homemaker, everything that needed to be done, I did it. And I would tell them, your father is at work. And it was beginning when they got ready to go to preschool. I said them time, I said, your daddy is a hard-working man. He takes care of me. He takes care of you. And I said, when you go to school, that's your job. You see your daddy get up early in the morning and come on late at night. So your job is when you go to school is to learn, not to be there trying to fool your teachers that you're a rod or you're a broad. I say, because if I hear something like that, I'm coming to your school and I'm going to take care of you.
They are identical twins, right?
Yes. But Lee, when Lee was home, we 4 would play basketball, whatever, And we were a family who did things together. It wasn't like when he got time for us, he would do what Lee wanted to do. But no, Lee was a family man, So that made it easy for me, because I knew when Lee would come home, he would have time for us.
Let me say something, Dave. I have never known life without Evelyn's. My mother's name Evelyn, and Evelyn is named Evelyn. And they are so much alike. The other part of it was my father always prided himself in saying, my kids never ate a meal that I didn't pay for. In other words, he believed if you had a child, it was your job to feed him. And he took pride, unbelievable pride, in no one ever feeding his kids. So I'm brought up in kind of. The guy was fanatical about that. He took pride. He would not. He sat there and he'd watch his kids eat. But his whole life was that he was the sole provider for his kids. The other thing was, I never realized what all she did until I retired, and we would have walks. And she would start talking. And I realized that Evelyn was not just a mother, she was the leader most of the time of the family. She carried a large portion of that and never complained. Now, if she had complained, I probably would have realized it, but because she did it with such a willing heart. And the other thing that was people don't get this. I can truthfully say I would not have been the success I am without her.
That was going to be my question.
I really did not. I remember Evelyn has never asked me to buy anything. If I said we were going to buy something, she always said, "Can we afford it?" If we were going on a new venture, she would clearly say, "What is it you want me to do? How is it I can help you?" Now, I'm not making that up. When I was sick, Evelyn would step in and take over. And I've had 6 surgeries. She's been to every one of them. I had difficult recoveries. But what fascinated me, her role would change when I was ill. And she would revert back to that other role. So, you look back over that and you say, could you have made it without her? No. I don't think I think that rock that hit me in the back, which at times infuriated me that a little pretty girl would hit me with a rock. How dare you? But I think from that period on, one of the crutches that I subconsciously relied on was Evelyn. And the more I'm retired, the more I value the time we spend together, because I've been offered jobs. But I wouldn't sacrifice this time because I realized she had sacrificed enough. That's what I realized. It wasn't that I was sacrificing her. I realized she had sacrificed a lot for my success, more than I even imagined.
That's real good. The interesting thing I've always seen is pro baseball, pro football, whether you're black, white, Mexican, is the kids always give credit to their mother.
Mm-hmm.
And I think largely people grow up to be who their mother and then mother and father as a family
Right.
unit. They see y'all love each other and hold, and that's the kind of kids they're going to be. So when they get married,
Mhm.
they're not going to abuse their spouse because they saw a loving home.
Right.
Yeah.
Role models.
And I'm gonna tell you, I have actually been around people that have tried to trivialize the effect that parents, their hard work, the effect that has on the outcome of kids. And it's simply because they're either selfish or they don't understand the suffering. And when I look back through Evelyn, I began to realize that my parents and all, how great and blessed that statement was that my mother said, "Shut up and be quiet. You're born in this country and you have good parents." I didn't know how powerful that was until I now look back over it and say to my kids, and you hear people try to trivialize the effect of a good parent or the effect of a good home or the effect of contributions. But Dave, you're right. It is a major, major game changer. And a lot of times they're the same people that are reaping the benefits of it. But I'm telling you, that is a phenomenal gift to have a good wife, a good support system, and good parents.
Tell me about your boys just real briefly. I think that alone, just where they got in life, speaks volumes of you two. So, Evelyn, why don't you do that since he's talked so much already? Talk about your boys. I know you're proud of them.
Oh, yes, I am. They are my heart. Yes. Roderick and Broderick, they always been just good young men. Lee traveled. We were together so much until I could remember Broderick. Both of them really. If I'm not around for a certain length of time, they want me to come to Indianapolis. I'm going to see Rod going to come here to find me. So the bond that we have together, you know, is just unbelievable. And Roderick and Broderick, they'll do anything to please you. And as when they went off to school, I can remember going off to school. That was the hardest thing for Lee and myself because we were a unit. When you see one, you see four. When they went off to school, every other weekend, we were there. Just in a room together, you know, eating, looking at football or whatever. Many times we didn't even have to say anything to one another because it's just the company. And I feel Roderick and Broderick, their behavior, everything about them, they got it from Lee and myself. You know, work habits, both of us work hard. I worked in the fields, whatever field it was to go to, tomato field, potato field, whatever field. So they have a good work habit. They love people. They just a joy to be around.
Well, talk about it right now. What are they doing? What's been their careers?
Oh, your career. Both of them are doctors, as you know. Both of them have families. Broderick is in Indianapolis, Indiana. Rod is here. And the field they're in, Broderick is doing other things, right?
Yeah. It's amazing as I look at Evelyn and I look at Rod and Brod and I see so much of her traits in them. And it's not, you know, my mother used to say something that I understand now. You can't talk your way into the Parents Hall of Fame. I mean, she told me, so you can't talk your way. You can't get mad and throw tantrums and get your way into the Parents Hall of Fame. You're going to find out where you were. And you got to work your way, you got to earn your way, and you got to suffer your way, because people that trivialize that don't understand that. Roderick and Broderick is a testimony of what my mother said. You don't talk your way into the Hall of Fame. I watch Rod and Brod. They are people of God. They're people of faith. They go to work. They want to earn their way. They take the same psychotic pride that my dad took in. Nobody ever put rhyant food on the table. I put for. They value their family, and people that never understood. You basically treat your wife the same way your father treated your mother. Or it's the other extreme. You're trying to rebel it, but some way it relates. I say this: my greatest accomplishment was first stumbling up and marrying Evelyn, staying out of jail. The next one was Rod and Brod being good community citizens, people of faith, people who earn their way, good fathers, good husbands, and most of all, they represent my parents' dreams and her parents. And I think we did that. And being a doctor, that's hard work. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's hard work, man.
How many grandkids do y'all have now?
We have 3.
3. Okay.
Mhm.
Are there going to be any more? Or you
I don't
no?
think so.
Yeah. Pam and I got 6. And there's nothing like grandkids. I'm telling you what. Let's see where we are.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now,
Well,
Evelyn was an educator,
Let me.
and that played a big role, I think.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, talk
it did.
Yeah.
Well, like I taught for 31 years in elementary school, and the last 6 years of those, I commuted back and forth from Indianapolis to Atlanta. Yes, do you know that?
Yeah.
Yes, because Lee, in the beginning, I was going to come here with Lee, which we did during the summer, and to find out that Lee would not be home and I would be here by myself, we decided that I would stay in Indianapolis and finish my career. So that's what I did. So I commuted back and forth. If Lee did not come to Indianapolis, I would come here or wherever Lee was on the weekend. So on a Friday after work, I would leave, and then on a Sunday afternoon, I would go back. And I did that for 6 years.
What a woman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and she was here during the summer because she taught. She would be here, but during the breaks. But Evelyn would commute. So I think people look at Evelyn and think there's this little pretty thing. But there's a very tough, dedicated person. Because, you know, a large portion of my career, I'm either gone or I'm sick. The other part of it is right back to what Mother says. You don't talk your way into it. I look at a lot of times success, and I realize that my success has a lot to do with her.
Based on what I've heard so far.
Yeah, because remember, a lot of time my winning and losing wasn't about the situation at work. It was really, as long as I had Mother, Daddy, and Evelyn, I was good, because they had been with me when I didn't even have anything. So that was a different thing. And the other thing too was that I watched how Evelyn would treat people, because a lot of times this stuff goes to your head. And Evelyn would treat everybody until people liked Evelyn for who she was. And she was also always graceful. She was also humble. And you never had to caution Evelyn about being arrogant to anybody. And I think one of the things that Sam Olin and Deanne and you guys would say, she's so nice. But that's a conscious decision to be nice. People choose to be nice, nasty, or indifferent. It's a conscious decision. And she has chosen to be nice.
I'm amazed. I didn't know that story. That is a wonderful story.
Yes.
I now know why Lee was successful. Didn't have anything to do with him. It had something to do with you.
31.
You had to make money to pay the bills, but that's about it. Then you had your structure at home. Well, let's shift to community stuff, and if I get you and Lee together, and we'll go into that phase. Is that okay, Ty? Sure. Because that's the side of Lockheed that we all saw. For most people in this community, that's about all you saw.
Yeah.
There was this big building over here that made airplanes, and you saw them take off and you saw them land. But you would go to events, and there would be Lockheed. And that's the balance. Trying to do your job, be involved in your family, but also be a good community citizen. I love that airplane. I actually have that pin up.
I have a
Do
pin
ya?
somewhere.
Yeah, I should have worn mine.
Okay.
Okay. You ready? Okay. 1, 2, 3.
1, 2, 3, testing.
Testing 1, 2, 3. Alice, when did you first meet Lee? What was your job? Let's talk about it for a minute.
You tuck the microphone wire kind of under your arm.
Okay.
Kind of just so it's not out. There you go.
Let's see. I'm going to sit on it to make it. How's that?
That's fine. I
Okay.
mean, just generally talk about your role at Lockheed, how you met him, what your responsibilities were, so the camera, the people reading this, know who you are. I
Well,
don't need your life journey. Obviously, we got his, but
a lot of people don't know that I met Lee actually at Rolls-Royce Aerospace in Indianapolis. I went up there to do their marketing
Right.
services division, and while there, I met Lee and Evelyn, and we started our friendship in Indianapolis,
what year was that?
1996. And then in 2000, I saw Lee walking down what we call Mahogany Row at Lockheed, and I knew that we were in turmoil and our lives were about to change, but in a very good way.
So did y'all come down together, one and then the other?
It was totally separate.
Totally separate.
I didn't know the conversations going on in private rooms, but when I saw him, I knew it was a good sign.
You know, Bill was at Emory Air. Remember that?
Right.
And we gave the money for you to go down there and see him.
Right.
Yeah, I remember that.
My husband, Bill.
Yeah.
Yeah, he worked for Lee
Okay.
when we were up at Rolls-Royce.
Okay.
So we started our relationship and friendship there.
So when you came down here, what job did Lee put you in? What was your role at Lockheed?
She was already here when I came.
Oh, she got here first.
Yeah,
Okay,
I'm glad
I
I
got it.
tell
I'm
the
sorry,
story.
I got it back.
Lockheed had called me back,
Okay.
and I came back, and then I was in communications and community relations.
And then how long before Lee showed up on the site?
And then Lee came in 2000.
2000.
Okay. So did you train him on how to do community stuff?
No, but I had the pleasure of working side by side with Lee, and it was an incredible journey.
It was so rewarding because in Indianapolis you had to do it anyway, and with GM you'll be a lot of times you'll be the only community, but this one was different in as much as you had to rebrand so much, and it was difficult, and I remember, and we talked about the conversations, and I remember Terry Powell and Dr. Kaufman. We're in Fort Worth for an SBC training or something, and they both said, "I don't know if you guys can rebrand it." You know, because they see the press. You know, you can think you're good, and it took a strategic plan. I mean, it wasn't emotion. It took strong people. Because a lot of times you were showing, Alice and folks were showing up where people had resentment. And they didn't care to hide the resentment. So it was and also the interesting thing about Lockheed is that damn near everybody in Georgia knows someone or had someone to work at Lockheed. So there was that pride that they felt you had betrayed. And when you talked about Lockheed, you spoke of their family. You spoke of their mothers. You spoke of their fathers. You spoke of their legacy, food on their table. So they took this stuff personal. And when the newspaper editors and all those folks, they didn't take kindly. And I'll never forget Andy Young and I remember one of the leaders in Atlanta saying, "I'm mad at Lockheed because my so and so worked there. That's not who you got." So when you have that type of brand, and then they expected a lot more from you in the community, so that's the challenge that Alice had, and I think Alice is being modest. Her family worked at Lockheed.
My dad was there for 35 years.
Marietta?
It did, and he was an aeronautical engineer. And back in those days, it was outside the fence, the wind tunnel was. So on Saturdays, as long as I promised to stay in a certain area and not talk, I got to go to work with Dad and see some of the tests that were run. And he retired after 35 years with Lockheed Martin.
Well, tell me your role when Lee arrived. Tell me what you were doing, and did you just continue doing what you were doing before he arrived? Just talk about that. What were you doing when Lee arrived? What I'm trying to get at is I want to understand how Evelyn's talked about family, and I know you had a lot to do with Lee's world, because he can't do it all.
Right.
He had to have help at home. He had to help with the customer, but he also had to help. He needed help from you to do the business of Lockheed.
Well, as Lee so eloquently mentioned, our relationship in the community was poor. And we both agreed that the days of writing a check for an organization were over. We were either going to show up or not go at all. So our strategy was let the employees get a sense of the importance of how Lockheed was viewed in the community. And we could fill anywhere from 4 to 10 tables. And it was about that wondrous entanglement of our employees being in the community and in the community understanding more, putting a face to that big building on South Cobb Drive.
What did your job evolve into? I'm assuming like Lee got there, you already had assessed the situation. So what did it involve to? Because I know Lee probably got some things to talk about there.
I think what happens is that when you come from different corporations, you learn that she may have a title, but that's not her job. We give people titles, but Alice's job was boundaryless. In order for Jack Lambert, if anybody was just to stay in their lane, we were not going to survive.
That's true.
I mean, we were not going to survive. Her job was to gain the confidence of the union. Her job was to participate. We lucked up and got Shan. We had Jack Lambert. The other part of it was their job was to be a voice, a face. Also, remember, I'm a human being. So sometimes I've got to have somebody I can call and just blow up at, or act a fool, or show my real emotions, or somebody that's like, can tell you, and this is more a lesson for leaders. Wilson Burns told me, you little hot-headed guy, go find you a bunch of people that can chew your butt out and tell you when you are wrong, and you not get so mad you won't listen to them. So I had Alice, Jack, Shan, and Evelyn, and certain other people that could come and speak in my ear and say, Lee and Scrick and all those wonderful folks, they could tell me stuff. That was part of Alice's job that I needed to hear, that maybe if anybody else told me I'd be in jail for murder or choke up or fired. So she became a confidant. She became a listening board. She became a voice. And the other thing too, I had to have somebody that was so embedded in Alice, in Lockheed Martin, that when they went out there, they believed so much in the brand that they could take all the crap that came with it at that time. And Alice was bold enough, because some of the places we went were not exactly embracing the first time. They were not very. I remember we went to visit one senator, this was before Mr. Isaacson, and the guy literally didn't want us to come in his office. This is a true story. Or I also remember, back to the conversation with Mr. Isaacson, we had to behave in a way at Lockheed Martin so when they are going and talking for Lockheed Martin, the people wouldn't say, why are you talking about that bunch of folks? They felt connected to it. It made their job easier. It made the Colonel's job easier.
Right.
And also, in the community, let's face it, it was Georgia Power and Lockheed.
I'll tell you what, Lee.
And we had to have a wondrous entanglement, because we had powers that be, that if you didn't have the Connells, you didn't have the Alices, you didn't have the Chamber, and you didn't have this entanglement, we could not win Cobb County in the way we did. Because let me tell you, the image that they had, the state of Georgia couldn't have embraced back then, but then they could embrace us and we could grow.
Right.
Well, I'll tell you over time, and you know what brand is. When you say the name of the company, you instantly think of something. You know, you say Coca-Cola, and you think of the Coke. You say McDonald's. For me, anyway, I think of a good Big Mac and some French fries or whatever. But when you said Lockheed in this community, it was Alice and it was Lee. The brand was there. You know, that's the first thing they think about airplanes. They thought about you too.
That's a privilege.
That's a privilege. Yeah. It was a privilege because, like I said, when you fall in love with the company, you fall in love with the people.
Right.
And I'll say this: the walkathons, the fundraising, and you begin the working with the schools. And when you come back 8 years later, you see a young person, and they stop you in the store, and they talk about one of your programs. That's why I'm at college. Then you begin to realize that stuff paid off.
Relationships
Were phenomenal.
Right.
But I remember, and Alice should be saying, I remember, and Dave, you would be there too, and Evelyn. We would do 3 to 4 events a weekend. We would give up our Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays, and some days during the week to make that thing, because we were digging out such a hole.
Right.
But the brand became us, how we looked, and became the company. The company was thought of different, and we also wanted the employees to grow up wanting to work for Lockheed.
Well, in many cases, there were 4 generations of family that worked there. So when you talk about loyalty, you know, that's where it comes from. And I can remember we started space camps and aviation camps, and as you went around the room the first day, you would ask the students, what do you want to be when you grow up? And it was everything from nail technicians to being a pro basketball player to being a fireman, and those are wonderful careers. But at the end of 5 days, investing in these students' lives, and you went around the room and they wanted to be C-130 pilots, or they wanted to be in the National Guard, or fly the F-22, and that's when you realize that you're truly making a difference in these kids' lives.
I'll tell you another way people thought about you, Allison, and as I'm listening, you're a lot more than whatever the title is, and you said that before. Obviously, Lee needs a lot of help at home, and Lee's a lot of help at work. So, but everybody knew you were almost untouchable because you were gone all the time. And when we needed to talk to Lockheed, we talked to Alice, and we knew it would get communicated back and forth to you because you were just untouchable. You were gone. To a lot of people, you were way up here as the king, but you could always. Alice would always. Return your phone calls, and you say, I need Lockheed to do this, or I need Lee to know that. You knew with confidence it was going to happen. So she became a continuity factor for the community. She was the connection that made sure you stayed connected, so you could do the other stuff.
I tried to be an extension of Lee.
And we consciously wanted our employees to all become ambassadors for Lockheed.
Right.
And every one of them, and they began to take on, I'm representing Lockheed Martin. They were ambassadors.
Right.
They took pride. They had gone from, they started back wearing the Lockheed apparel. You could see that. Or the walkathons. They took pride. Right. I mean, if we said we needed 200 walkers, we'll get 300 or 400 walkers. It was, and Alice had a lot to do with that because that's a transformation. That's also, I think the other part that we consciously said was that the Betty Siegels of the world and the Lisas, Rossbacher, that we had to embrace Kennesaw State. We had to embrace Chattahoochee Tech. We had to embrace Southern Poly. We had to embrace these because it was so much, Dave, as you know, critical for us to grow the community. We had to have these institutions, and the Dan Paps, and now the wonderful lady they have out there now. It's just a wonderful thing to look at how we knew we had to support them. So it wasn't just the political side, it was also the educational side, the community side, and the institution side. And then we had to bond with the corporate, because unless we had other corporate entities together, we couldn't get the elastic behavior we needed to flip the chamber of dinners and all of that with sponsorship.
Right.
I'm guessing, I'm going out on a limb here, but I'm guessing that you play a role with Evelyn. I suspect sometimes she would call and say, "Do you know where my husband is?" That was the case in my career. My wife would call the administrative assistant. It was his mother one time, and his other people, because you're in that role to support him. So you see him at work, and she's taking care of the family and working. And you want to talk any about that? That's an unwritten rule. I mean, that's not in the job description.
That's exactly how I feel.
Yeah.
And I did feel part of their family, and always respected Evelyn for her role, not only as Lee's wife and mother of Broad and Rod, but the role that she played with Lockheed Martin, and always being there to support Lee at events. Whatever it was, you could always depend on Evelyn to be there. And we did have a good relationship, and it was almost like sisters in a matter of speaking.
Well, I'm going to have to close down, but I do want to ask one quick question. I have, and you could just repeat what I'm saying, and you may want to answer this, Lee. Alice played an important role of almost like being a consultant to you for community stuff. And I'm assuming you gave him direction, you fussed at him, told him where he needed to go and not go. Either one of you might want to address that for just a couple of minutes, and then we'll be done. So, Alice's role as being a consultant to you, you couldn't function without having somebody to help you think through the strategy for the community.
I think we were both at a stage in our career, technically, that we understood what needed to be done.
Right.
We were also at a stage of our career in personal development that we understood. So Alice played a unique role because I had worked with her before at Rolls-Royce Aerospace. But when we came to Marietta, we were kind of like put in a situation where we needed each other. I mean, it was not a very embracing environment. I mean, let's face it. The other thing, there was a relationship with Evelyn, and that Alice naturally had. They were more like sisters, so it gave me a peace of mind. I also think those at corporate at the time, they learned to respect Alice, because I tell you, Alice played a role, and I think if you were to talk to Shan and Jack and all those folks, Alice played a role that far transcended that of the community relations or communications person. She played the role where she was a lot of times the one that would nurture certain people back in the box, or she was also the one that people could confide in. So you're right. You're right, Dave. And Alice was a willing worker, because that job requires more than 24/7. It requires your total life.
I think we agreed. We knew what had to be done, and we totally agreed on the path forward. And it was to be involved and to show up and to do the right thing.
Yeah, and I think the community knew. The Connells, the other folks, we would do events. They knew we were going. They got to the point that they knew we were going to do our part the right way. They could depend on us. You know, it wasn't we were just going to write a check. We were going to show up. We were going to be supportive, and we didn't just support events of one segment. We supported all events.
Right.
And that really is what made a big difference.
And let our employees be the ambassadors.
Yeah, let the employees be the ambassadors.
Instead of 2 mouthpieces, we had 8,000.
Yeah, we did not have any liking of people wanting to attend the events. Well, we started before. Our employees were demanding to attend the event. They wanted to be front and center.
Right. They were proud.
Well, we need to stop. He's got a hard stop, like right now.
Yeah, I got being done with it.
He's got to be done with